I'm going to jump right into it because I don't have as much time as I normally do, but I want to preach just for a few moments this whole concept of you have to see it. You have to see it. It's out of Joshua chapter 1, verse 1. It reads like this. It says, after the death of Moses, the servant of the Lord said to Joshua, the son of Nun, Moses' assistant, Moses, my servant is dead. Now therefore arise, go over this Jordan, and you and all this people into the land that I am giving to them, to the people of Israel. Every place that the sole of your foot will tread upon, I have given to you, just as I have promised to Moses. I want to skip down to verse 5. It says, no man shall be able to stand before you all the days of your life, and just as I was with Moses, so I will be with you. I will not leave you or forsake you. Be strong and courageous, for you shall cause this people to inherit the land that I swore to their fathers. See, here's what destiny is. Destiny is you and I connecting to God's plan for our life. That's what destiny is. Destiny is you and I connecting with the will of God over our lives. And the reality is, over the last couple years, I feel like we've all been kind of in survival mode. Like the last couple years, it's like we're all just in survival mode. Whether it is COVID and the toll that that's taken on our physical health or mental health, whether that is like racial tensions and trying to figure out, okay, what do I believe and how does this manifest in my life? And no matter what the issue is, financial realities of going, man, my job that used to exist no longer exists anymore in the same format, in the same way that it does. So now I have to adjust. And I would probably surmise that very few of our life in the last year and a half, 2 years has been spent looking out over the horizon at our destiny. Just been trying to survive. Just been trying to say the right thing or not say the right thing. We've just been trying to survive. It's kind of like, there are two types of people in the world. There are rides people and games people. Come on, let me see if you're a rides person. You like the rides. You go to the fair, you're the rides. Okay, yeah. How many of you're the games people? You like popping the balloons with the dart and stuff like that. Yeah. When I was a kid, I was for sure a games kid. I did not like rides. Rides kind of freaked me out. As I got older, I've gotten more accustomed. I actually kind of like rides now. But I don't like all rides. I don't like them all. Like I get motion sickness pretty easily. Like I get motion sickness pretty easily. And there's this ride, I don't even know exactly the full name of it, but it's like this, I call it the space ride at Disney. No, not Space Mountain. I can handle Space Mountain. What is it? Mission Space. Yeah, also Spawn of Satan is what I call it. It's called Mission Space. I don't know if you've ever ridden this ride, but you get in this ride and it's supposed to simulate like you're going to space. And so the problem is it plays with your depth perception. And so it's like space is way out there and you're going up. And when I get motion sickness, I'm probably like you. When you get motion sickness, here's how I know I'm not feeling well. I'll start sweating. I get a lump in my throat and I'm nodding my head yes, but nobody asked me a question. Nobody asked me anything, but I'm just got that lump in your throat. And I'm on this ride. And when I'm on this ride, I totally forget I'm even at Disney. I totally forget that there's gonna be fun to be had after this ride. The only thing I'm thinking is, Lord, if you're real, get me through this ride. Lord, if you're there, if you're present, if you love me at all, get me through. I just wanna get to the end of this ride. And what I firmly believe, that's how all of us have been kind of living the last 2 years. Just God, if you're there. Can you get me through this? And at some point, and I believe the point is now, in your life, you gotta draw a line in the sand and go, okay, by the grace of God, I've been holding on. That's great. Some seasons, the win is the holding on. Some seasons, the win is survival. But at some point, there's a line in the card and you gotta go, okay, I'm through that season. Now I'm done holding on. Now I'm lifting up my chin. And now I'm lifting up my head. And now I got to start seeing the destiny. I got to start revisiting, God, what are the dreams? What are the things you have on my life? What's the new ground in this new season that you're calling me to take? And I'm not just content anymore by just surviving. God, you've created me for a purpose. You've created me for something. And oftentimes, you don't see it, you just sense it. In fact, in the kingdom of God, we see with our ears. And we see with our spirits. And so there are things that you know God is calling you to. And you can't even maybe articulate it, and you can't see it right now, but you know that it's real. I remember when I started sitting down with people 6.5 years ago. Me and Christina would have conversations with people, and we'd sit down at a coffee shop, or we'd sit down over lunch, and we began to paint the picture of what Grace City Church was gonna look like, even though there was no visual representation. Right now, you can come and go, hey, this, and then we're gonna do this, and we're gonna do this, and you can look around and you can see visual representation of what God has done. But this was a day when there was no visual representation. All you had is the Spirit of God breathing into your ear saying, hey, there's some people to help. And there's some things to do. And the reality is this, and if you and I, if we don't know who we are, we'll never achieve the fullness that God has for us. In fact, my only point today is this, is that if you aren't listening to what God is saying about you, then you'll never understand what he sees in you. Come on. If you aren't listening to what God is saying about you, then you'll never understand what he sees in you. This was the story of Joshua. Joshua he's Moses' assistant. In fact, he's even known as that. Moses is the central character in the story. It's like, oh yeah, Joshua, and he's the son of Nun. He's Moses' assistant. Moses is dead. Moses is the key figure in this story. Joshua feels insignificant and probably incapable. It says God says to Joshua, Moses, my servant, is dead. Now therefore arise. And I love this. Every place that the sole of your foot will tread upon, I'm going to give to you, just as I promised Moses. What a moment for Joshua. Because there are times in life, you ever went through a season of life you felt like you got punched in the gut? It's like nothing's working. I remember my first job in ministry, I felt like I had a lot of fruit. And then I took my second job in ministry and I went and worked at a larger church. And for 12 months, nothing I did worked. Nothing. And whenever you go through a season like that, isn't it easy to minimize yourself and start second guessing what you feel like God's been speaking to you your whole life? So what I started doing is, instead of going, I got to get better and I got to get better at my craft and I got to grow as a leader and I got to do this, the first thing, and oftentimes because it's the easiest thing to do, is I just start going, I'm just probably not the leader I thought I was. And I don't think I'm a leader of thousands. Maybe I'm just a leader of tens. Maybe I'm a leader of hundreds, but I don't think I'm a leader of thousands. And I started minimizing something that I felt like God very clearly at one point spoke into my life. But it's amazing how we can overreact to a season. Come on, some of you, you're still living by an overreaction to a momentary season. You're still living with doubt and guilt and shame because you made some dumb decisions in this season of your life. Some of you, your relationships aren't what they could be because you still feel guilt and shame about something you said to your spouse that you wish you could take back, but you said it in rage and anger, and they've forgiven you, but you haven't forgiven yourself. And we're living boxed in because we took a punch to the gut in a certain season of our life. And oftentimes how you view yourself will come down to what song you're listening to over and over and over again. Now, there's some of you in this room, you annoy us. And the reason you annoy us is because some of you, you're in this room, be honest. Are you one of those people in this room that, like, you find a song and you will listen to that thing over and over and over. Like it'll even get to like the last 5 seconds, like in your car and your friend, and you'll replay it and you're like, hey, can we play the whole record? Like, can we let me see your hand if you're one of those people. Let me see your hand. You know who you are. Yeah. You just find that same song. And by the way, what I find interesting is they don't even necessarily have to be like happy songs. They just have to be songs. Sometimes they can be like songs that gives us the sadsies. You ever have songs like that? You're like, this song gives me the sadsies. And you're like, I want to be sadsies today. And you just listen to that song over and over and over and over. Well, what is interesting is that you will eventually believe what you hear the most. We eventually believe what we hear the most. And so what's the song you keep letting play over and over and over in your head? Like if you're Joshua, he had the oh no moment. That was my church version of that. The oh no moment. Moses is dead. And he was Moses, and everybody looks at him. And everybody looks at him. And what God did is he began to speak over his life. And if he would have kept listening to himself, he would not have walked in his destiny. But because when God said, get up, he got up. And when God says, every place your foot touches, I'm going to give to you, he believed him. And I just believe that some of you got to start believing the voice of God again. You got to start believing what God said over your life when you were 14 years old. You got to start believing what God said over your life 5 years ago when you first got saved. You got to start believing over your life what you spoke over your wedding vows when you got married. You got to start believing over your life what your youth pastor prophesied of. You got to start believing again that God has created me for good works and that he knows me and that my whole life has been built towards serving him and serving other people. Verse 5, he says, no man shall be able to stand before you all the days of your life. And just as I was with Moses, so I will be with you. I'm not going to leave you or forsake you. Be strong and courageous. And I love this. For you shall cause this people to inherit the land that I swore to their fathers to give them. You know what you and I need? We need mile markers that let us know we're on the right track. That's what we need. And I love that God gives Joshua a couple mile markers that lets him know, hey, you're walking in my destiny. You're on the right track. First thing he says, hey, I'm going to be with you. In fact, he says, I'm going to be with you. And then he gives them a physical, because sometimes that can be like a little like philosophical. Like, what does it mean for God to be with me? This is what he says, I'm going to be with you. And you actually even have a physical representation. You have a manifestation. You had a first person view of what that looks like. He says, I'm going to be with you the same way I was with Moses. You know God's with you in a greater capacity than he was even with Moses. You're like, I haven't seen a burning bush and I didn't walk through a Red Sea. No, I'm telling you, God's with you. You get a unique relationship with God that Moses begged for. You want to find out? Because he did. Remember, there was a time in the scriptures where Moses says, God, I wish I could see you. I wish I could see you. And God says, well, nobody can see me and live. I know, but can I just catch a glimpse? The Bible says that God says, okay, I'm going to pass by you and I'm going to put my hand over this rock that you're going to be in. And just before I step out of view, I'm going to let you see the back. What Moses was really longing for is he was longing for Jesus. And everybody that lives on this side of Jesus has the relationship with God that Moses begged for. He has the relation. We have the relation. We have beholden the Christ. And so if you want to know what God is like, we got it in Jesus. If you want to know what his nature is, and I love that God speaks confidence over Joshua. And so he says, I'm with you. The second way that you desperately know that you're on the right track is that people are finding their promised land around you. I think, listen, you and I got to be careful that, here's another way to say it. You are the third most important person in your own destiny story. The most important person is Jesus. God, may everything I do glorify you. The second reality to people is what? Is serving people. Is other people finding their promised land. Because real God-given vision always has to do with other people finding their promised land. Always. If your dream is me-centric and self-centric, then I don't know that it's a God dream. It doesn't mean that it can't benefit you, and it doesn't mean you won't be blessed by it. It just means that you got to take this macro vision. Like, instead of going, like when I was younger, man, I had to change the way I thought. My goal was not to preach to thousands. My goal was to help people. Not on a macro level, but on an individual level. I love that God says, you are going to be the reason. Did you know this? There's another way of saying it. People are praying for you to walk in your destiny. Because people are praying right now, God, I pray for my future spouse. And I pray they're serving you. And you know who they're praying for? They're praying for you right now, single person. They're praying for you. People are praying right now, God, I pray that you would just give me a sign. I'm depressed and I'm lonely. And you're going to go to work with that person tomorrow. You're going to go to school with that person tomorrow. God, our family's struggling financially. I pray you're going to be sitting in a cubicle next to that person tomorrow. That a gift card to a gas station would be such a small thing, but would be such a sign to them. If your vision is only about your life getting better, I don't think it's a God vision. Because that's not how God gave visions in the scriptures. And then the last thing that I want to pull out of this, and we're done. I know we went a little long today. If you're new to our church, like, just pretend we're like a Pentecostal church in Louisiana right now. The last thing is this. When it comes to your destiny and what God's speaking over your life, isn't it interesting? It's always easier to see it in other people than it is to see it in yourself. Isn't that interesting? Like, some of you think so highly of other people and so lowly of yourself. It's so easy to see, and sometimes you need these sobering reminders to go, no, there's something on my life. Listen, you have to see it. I can get up here all I want, and I would love to have coffee with you and like shake some belief in you and stir up some faith in you, but if you don't see it, it won't matter. You have to get up and go to work tomorrow and say, there's something on my life that my coworkers need. You got to go to school tomorrow and say, man, the Spirit of God is upon me to preach the good news. You got to be in your families and say, God, you have set me apart. You got to see it. And it's hard for us to see. I remember, like, the first person, our church had hired this young adults pastor, and he came in and started this young adult ministry when I was like 19, 18 at this church. And he was the first person I'd ever seen on a platform, like, be able to like grab a room. And I'd never seen anything like, I didn't grow up in church. I'm like, I'd never seen anything like this. And it was the first time that I'm like, that's what I want to do. I want to make a room with hundreds or thousands of people in it feel like there's like 10 of us. Like, that's what, and I was in awe of this person. I still have a great relationship with this person to this day, and I was just blown away. His ability to communicate was just second, and I'd never seen anything like it. Well, fast forward the tape, years later, I was speaking at a conference in Portland, and this guy that is a friend of mine to this day, he came over to the conference because he was senior pastoring in that same city, and he came over, and it was me, him, and talking to the guy who invited me to speak at the conference. He goes, oh yeah, like, honestly, dude, I'm glad you had Andrew. Like, he's literally my favorite preacher. Because I listen to him every week. He's my favorite preacher. And it was weird for me because it was easy for me to see it in him. Like, I saw him like that. So it was weird to me, him communicating that that's how he saw me. And if you're Joshua, it's easy to go, I'm not Moses. Like Moses, you know, like they made it like a movie with him, and Mariah Carey and Whitney Houston are on the soundtrack. Like Moses. I'm not Moses. But you want to know what? There was a day where Moses wasn't Moses. There was a day where there was a burning bush and Moses sees it. And God had to do something supernatural just to get his attention. He says, hey, you're going to lead my people to the promised land. And what does Moses do? Moses gives excuses. And he tries to get out of it. And he tries to communicate that he's not the one. He can't possibly be the one. There was a day where Moses wasn't Moses. This world needs you to desperately believe and walk in what God has put on your life. Our church needs you to believe that you are who God says you are. Our city desperately needs you to believe that there's an anointing and a grace and a calling on your life that is unique and special. And that all those burdens you feel, they're the good kind of burdens. The kind of burdens that say, you know what, God, I want to walk in your ways because I know in me a lot of people can be helped. Because all of us have a world that God has called us to influence. All of us have a space that God has called us to walk with his confidence, and all of us have a destiny that God has put on our life. Come on, church, let's stand to our feet.